the Second Amendment movements and these different gun groups, they're trying to reorganize and figure out, hey, what's next? What's on the chopping block? We are the Armed Attorneys. Today, we're talking about a myth busted when it comes to the left's narrative on firearm ownership here in the United States. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And today's video is brought to you by our friends at Sonoran Desert Institute. Check them out at sdi.edu/armed-attorneys. They got online gunsmithing and armor courses. Take your hobby to the next level with Sonoran Desert Institute. Now, I think it's important to highlight, because this is one of the tactics on the left. They try to kind of divide people up into these little groups, make you feel small, and then attack, attack, attack. But we are seeing, I think, probably inspiring, or I was just say good news on the front of gun ownership.
Yeah, gun ownership is probably much higher than it has previously been reported because, of course, whenever the anti-gun folks, whenever they latch onto a piece of information that represents gun ownership, they always try to downplay it. Look, these gun owners, it's a small minority. It's basically the tail wagging the dog. They shouldn't be paid attention to politically. They really try to downplay that.
Yeah.
And of course, that narrative did suffer a tremendous blow because of just the numbers of guns that were sold from 2020, 2021, and 2022.
Yeah. So the number we're looking at previously, I'd say the reported or purported number of households with firearms, the number as low as 30% is what I heard. And I think they did this so that whenever, they're approaching the donor class, or they're trying to rally up their base, they say, hey, look, you're being controlled by, the fringe NRA, a special interest group. Well, we found out that number is much, much higher.
It could be as high as 60%.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that all depends upon, how much your state laws allow you to have gun ownership, how gun ownership is facilitated in some states, your access to guns. For example, here in Texas, I believe Texas has the most FFLs, licensed FFLs in the United States.
It's over 1,500. It's a lot.
Yeah. So gun ownership it can be easily facilitated here in Texas. I would say that, Texas households is probably 80%.
Yeah.
Whereas someplace like Massachusetts or New Jersey is probably down in the 20s or 30s. And keep in mind, I think that a lot of folks who are moving from anti-gun states like New Jersey and New York, moving to Florida, or the Californians who are continuously moving to Texas.
Yep.
One of the first things they do is purchase a gun because it's liberating. It's they're previously in a state where it's taboo, and now they get to exercise that freedom.
Yeah, it makes you think of the Babylon Bee. California's, if y'all haven't seen it, it's the Californians moving to Texas, and by the end of it, they're both gun nuts.
Texas changed them.
I love guns!
I knew it!
Oh, yes. And also, it also depends on, these previous surveys. It depends on where the survey is taken, because I know a lot of people distrust surveys. I mean, if you have a random person calling you up on the phone saying, hey, do you own guns? Who's gonna answer that honestly?
Yeah.
Especially if you're in an anti-gun state. So let's say that you're in California and you're a 30-year-old who has lived under the onerous California gun laws the entire time. However, your grandfather and your father, who are 80 years old or 60 years old, there was a time when California was free and they could guns. Maybe they accumulated a collection of guns, and maybe that collection of guns was passed down to you, and maybe you're afraid of telling the California government or letting anybody know that you have a closet full of guns that you inherited. Are you going to answer a survey honestly?
Oh, absolutely not. But I think this might be one of the, thinking about this might be one of the reasons that I'll say the foot has been taken off the gas a little bit in state legislatures with regard to, hey, what comes after, constitutional or permitless carry. We see the majority of states now have permitless carry. And in those states, we see the Second Amendment movements and these different gun groups, they're trying to reorganize and figure out, hey, what's next? What's on the chopping block? And I think just the knowledge of, hey, you're not a fringe minority. This is the majority of your state. I mean, obviously they got these passed out of their legislatures. I think that's very, very encouraging.
Yeah, and that's where really, whenever it comes to this fundamental right, people really should look at becoming single issue voters. I know single issue voters are kind of maligned in some corners, but this really is an issue where you should come out and you should support it, because if you are a gun owner, this is something that if the legislative tide turns against you, it could send you to prison.
Right.
So you would think that if the stakes are so high that you could wind up going to prison for something as ridiculously frivolous as the mere possession of a single bullet of ammunition, like in New Jersey. If you're caught with a single hollow point bullet in your pocket outside of your home in New Jersey, you go to prison. I mean, is that reasonable? No. So you definitely should look at becoming a single issue voter when it comes to this.
Yeah, and I think the second big takeaway from this 60%, that's not 100% yet.
Not yet.
We got to, those are rookie numbers. We got to pump those numbers up.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Take a friend out to go shooting, introduce folks to gun safety, introduce them to the sport, introducing people to the idea that, hey, you're responsible for your own safety. These are all great ways to get folks involved in the hobby, teaching kids responsible firearm ownership. There's a lot of work to be done. There's still 40% out there.
Show your friends videos from the armed attorneys.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video. Always question and comment in the section down below. And until next time, we're the armed attorneys.